everyone, welcome back to our channel eShreni. I Nehnas. Today we will start with the question and answers of the chapter 2, that's Nelson Mandela. It was an autobiography of the black president of South Africa. So I hope you all are doing all. সকলো যাতে ভালে আছে আৰু সুস্থ হৈ আছে and I hope you all are concentrating in the class so that মই যিখিনি কওঁ যিখিনি পঢ়াওঁ যিখিনি কওঁ গোটেইখিনি যাতে আপোনালোকৰ মনত থাকে আজি আমি স্টার্ট কৰিম নেলসন মেন্ডেলা চ্যাপ্টার 2 কোয়েশ্চন আনসার্স আমি নেলসন মেন্ডেলা চ্যাপ্টার 2 পার্ট বাই পার্ট কৰি আমি অলপকে কৰিছিলো অলপকে কৰি আমি বহুতখিনি এক্সটেন্ড কৰিছিলো মানে কি আমি এটা ক্লাছতে মই আপোনালোকক গোটেইখিনি কৰাই দিয়া নাছিলো মই অলপকে স্টেপ বাই স্টেপ কৰাই গোটেইখিনি কমপ্লিট কৰাইছিলো আৰু স্টেপ বাই স্টেপ এটো কাৰণে কৰিছিলো বিকজ চ্যাপ্টাৰটো আপোনালোকে ভালকে বুজি পাটো মই বিচাৰিছিলো আজি তাৰে মই কোৱেশ্চন আনসাৰ্স অলপ লৈ আহিছো আপোনালোকৰ আশা কৰো আপোনালোকৰ সুবিধা হয় বুলি হওক যাতে কোৱেশ্চন আনসাৰ্স এখিনি এক্সট্ৰা কোৱেশ্চন আনসাৰ্স হয় ইয়াতে মই শৰ্ট কোৱেশ্চনছো দিছো লং কোৱেশ্চনো দিছো আৰু এমসিকিউ টো আহিব পাৰে এনেকুৱা কোৱেশ্চনবোৰ আপোনালোকে আহক আমি চাই লও ইয়াতে আছে what was the national anthem of the blacks what was the national anthem for the blacks black or national anthem কি আছিল যোনদিনাখন ইনগ্ৰেচন সেৰেমনি আছিল ইনগ্ৰেচন সেৰেমনি দিনাখন তাতে আপোনাৰ কি হৈছিল নেশনাল এন্থেম গাইছিল ব্ল্যাক আৰু হোৱাইটৰ নেশনাল এন্থেম একেলগে গাইছিল আৰু ইনগ্ৰেচন চ্যাপ্টাৰটোৰ নাম কি আছিল লেট মি ৰাইট ইট হিয়াৰ চ্যাপ্টাৰটোৰ নাম আছিল নেলসন মেন্ডেলা It is an autobiography. কিহৰ আছিল নেলসন মেন্ডেলা আছিল ব্ল্যাক প্ৰেসিডেন্ট সাউথ আফ্ৰিকাৰ সাউথ আফ্ৰিকাৰ ব্ল্যাক প্ৰেসিডেন্ট আছিল নেলসন মেন্ডেলা So, হেনাখন কি আছিল ইনগ্ৰেচন সেৰেমনি আছিল আৰু ইনগ্ৰেচন সেৰেমনি দিনাখন তাতে বহুত ডিগনিটাৰী বডিজ আহিছিল তেও সম্বৰ্ধনা জনাবৰ কাৰণে কংগ্ৰেচুলেট কৰিবৰ কাৰণে আহিছিল আৰু তাতে গোৱা হৈছিল এন্থেম আছিল কিহৰ এন্থেম নেশনাল এন্থেম আছিল ব্ল্যাকৰ আৰু এন্থেমটোৰ নাম হৈছে ডাই স্টেম please go through the answer the national anthem for the blacks were die stem etu monot rakhiba who was sworn in as second deputy president hisabe kon ahisile Mr. D. Clerk just remember the thing Mr. D. Clerk second deputy president Mr. D. Clerk eta tips di disu to monot rakhiba le deputy D okay just remember second deputy president hole ki hobo second number de hobo Mr. D then etu clerk to monot rakhibo pahori gole deputy to dekhile jate apnalokor monot pore so নেলসন মেন্ডেলাৰ নামটো কি আছিল তেখেতৰ ফুল নেমটো হৈছে নেলসন ৰলি লালা মেন্ডেলা সো এটো আপোনালোকে সিলেবল ভাঙি লব ৰলি লালা দেন মেন্ডেলা ৰলি লালা মেন্ডেলা or you can also do ৰলি you can এনেকে বেছিকে আপোনালোকে সুবিধা হ'ব ৰলি ফাৰ্স্টত ৰলি তাৰছত la hal so all together it makes Roli Lala okay so it's a simple হৈ গৈছে so এটো মনত ৰাখিব তিনটা সিলেবল ভাঙি HLA Roli HLA so yate let's go to the next question to হৈছে What could the highest generals have done to the author earlier? So highest generals e author first earlier agote ki korisile hetu kole the highest general could have arrested the author earlier. So agote ki korisile they used to arrest the author. Next hoise how old was the author at the time of inauguration? Yate author boli kar kotha koise yate author boli kar kotha koise নেলসন নামটো কি আছিল নামটো ইয়াতে আপোনালোকে এবাৰ ৰিভিজন কৰি লব okay author কথা কৈছে how old was the author at the time of inauguration or time ot কি কৈছে তেওঁ কিমান এজ আছিল in his 80s ত আছিল তেখেতৰ okay why did he join African National Congress তেওঁ কিয় জয়েন কৰিছিলে why he joined the African National Congress to achieve freedom বিচাৰি for all his people তেওঁৰ নিজৰ মানুহৰ কাৰণে freedom বিচাৰি পেলাই কি হৈছিলে তেওঁ African National Congress জয়েন কৰিছিলে please have a quick look on the questions okay let's move to the question number 7 what was Mandela not unmindful of kihor karone nasile Mandela was not unmindful of apartheid teo bisara nasile bhalpoa nasile sorry it's apartheid remember it how was the new system different to keneke different hoisile because that system recognized the rights and freedom of all people new system to ki hoisile rights and freedom hokolo manore recognize kora hoisile all people okay next is who was sworn in as the first deputy president of South Africa first deputy president South Africa kon asile Thabo Mbeki I am silent okay please go through the question answers once sorry go through once okay done now let's move to the next slide where did the ceremony take place the ceremony took place in the Union Building of Pretoria kot hoisile Union Building ot hoisile kor Pretoria Union Building ot hoisile sorry kot hoisile Pretoria Union Building ot prothom ceremony hoisile inauguration ceremony to hoisile what was the occasion it was the occasion of installation of South Africa's first democratic government form hoisile South Africa who was Jinani say who was Jinani was the Jinani is the daughter of Nelson Mandela daughter asile Jake Jinani remember this name okay Jinani naam to apnaloke monot rakhibo edu mo koisilu bahut important boli exam perspective ot ahi jabo pare have a quick look okay let's move to the next slide when was that system eradicated the system was overturned in the last decade of the 20th century last decade of system khini ki hoisile overturned hoisile next hoise what did Mandela realize that there was no freedom in South Africa for anyone who looked like him so he realized that there was no freedom for anyone who was black. Look like মানে এটো তেও black to বুজাই black বুজাব খুজিছে. What did he think about freedom? He thought that freedom is indivisible. Freedom to indivisible বুলি ভাবিছিলে. Next. What does courage mean to Mandela? Remember, I told you many times while explanation. Explain কৰা টাইমত মই বহুত বাৰ কৈছিলো আপোনালোকক যে এইটো কোৱেশ্চন আহে ইম্পৰ্টেন্ট হয়. সো এতিয়া মই এইটো কোৱেশ্চনটো দিছো. What does courage mean to Mandela? Courage means to Mandela the triumph over fear. মানে ভয়ৰ জিকি আহা, ভয়টো পাৰ কৰি আগুৱাই যোৱা. What must the people learn? People মানুহখিনিয়ে কি শিকিছিলে? The people must learn to hate. But এক সেকেন্ড. Oh, sorry. What does the people? Yeah, it's this question. What must the people learn? কি শিকিছিলে মানুহখিনিয়ে? The people must learn to hate. If they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. যদি হিংসা কৰিবলৈ শিকে কোনোবাই, তেতিয়াহলে মৰম কৰিবলৈ শিকাব পাৰি. What promise did Mandela make to his people in the oath-taking speech? Oath-taking speechত Mandela কি কৰিছিলে? What promise did Mandela কি promise কৰিছিলে oath-taking speechত? কি কৰিছিলে? In the oath-taking speech, Mandela promised that the country shall not again experience the oppression of one by another. হল এইটা short question. Please note it down. যদি বিচাৰিছে লিখি লব পাৰে. মই অলপ কি কয় স্লাইডখন দেখাই দিছো. Okay, now let's move to question number 19. Who took oath first in the ceremony? In the ceremony, প্ৰথমতে কোনে লৈছিলে? Mr. D. Clark লৈছিলে. Mr. D. Clark first oath লৈছিলে. Who wrote the autobiography Long Walk to Freedom? Nelson Mandela himself. Okay, it's an autobiography, not a biography. What road in the perfect formation over the Union Building? Union Building ওপৰত কি ঘূৰি আছিলে? South African jets ঘূৰিছিলে, helicopters আছিলে. Troop carries rode in perfect formation over Union Buildings. হল আৰু autobiography মানে কি? The book or the chapter written by কোনে লিখিছিলে? The book or the chapter written by himself or herself. Please go through the questions. Let's go to next slide. What was specific about that system? Hey, specific কি আছিল হে সিস্টেমটোৰ কথা? কোনটো সিস্টেম? apartheid সিস্টেমটোৰ কথা. The system was performed on the basis of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies the world has ever known. Okay, next is, which does he think is natural, to love or to hate? Kuntu? To hate, right? Mandela thinks that to love is natural because it comes naturally into our heart. Okay, love amar naturally ahe, etu karone love is natural. Where did the oath taking ceremony take place? The oath taking ceremony took place in Union Buildings of Pretoria. Next, what did Mandela wants as a student? Mandela ki বিচাৰিছিল as a student? Mandela wanted freedom for himself as a student. What according to Mandela is true freedom? According to Mandela, true freedom means freedom not to be obstructed in leading a lawful life. Next is, why was the Mandela pained? Why was the Mandela pained? The Mandela was pained as the people who laid their lives for this day could not be presented to see. Okay, please go through the questions once. Okay, next. What are two enemies of a person? So, ejon manuhor enemy ki thake? Ejon manuhor enemy duta thake, and that's prejudice and narrow-mindedness. Narrow-mindedness is a very big enemy. Belegor kotha beya bhaba, belegor karone beya chinta kora, etu bahut dangor beya, etu bahut besi beya kotha hoy. And prejudice are the two enemies of a person. Who accompanied Mandela? Mandela kune accompany korisile? It's his daughter Jinani. What were the colors emitted by a chevron of Impala jets? Color to ki asile? The colors emitted by a chevron of Impala jet were black, red, green, blue and gold. One second. Okay, sorry, actually this slide is repeated. So, now the short answers are over and let's move to the long answer part. Why did inauguration ceremony take place in the amphitheater formed by the Union Building in Pretoria? Yate khudise the inauguration ceremony why did inauguration take place? Inauguration ceremony to tate kyo hoisile? Ki koy amphitheater formed by Union. Why did it take place in the amphitheater formed by the Union Building in Pretoria? Kyo hoisile tate? Because it was the first democratic non-racial government taking oath in South Africa. The ceremony was attended by dignitaries from more than 140 countries around the world and thousands of people of South Africa of all the races to make the day memorable. So, it took place in the amphitheater formed by the Union Buildings in Pretoria. So, it is a short question. Okay, so let's move to the next question, and the next question is, what do you understand by apartheid? Apartheid mane ki hoy? Apartheid is a political system. It is a political system hoy that divides apartheid to ki hoy? A political system hoy that divides people according to their race, color, colorot base kori divide kora. Color uporot base kori. Ki color? Skin color. It's a bilingual term. Moi English as it is miss kori likhi disu so that apnalokor subidha hoy understanding ot. কালাৰত বেস কৰি ডিভাইড কৰা ওকে In this system, black colored people in South Africa were not free even to discharge their personal and social obligations of being parents, son and husbands, etc. Nijor ekue right na thake etu systemot je ki hisabot কোনফালে কেনেকে কি ভাল কাম কৰিব বা কিবা নিজৰ ওপৰত লাগা বেয়া এলিগেশন মানে নিজৰ ওপৰত যদি কিবা ভুল এলিগেশনো লাগি থাকে তেতিয়া হলে হেতু ওপৰত মানে কাম কৰিব নোৱাৰাকে ইহত কাম কৰিব নোৱাৰে হিমানখিনিও ৰাইট নাথাকে নিজৰ ভুলটো আতৰাব কাৰণেও ৰাইট নাথাকে হিমানখিনিও মানে নিজৰ ওপৰত হেৰি নাথাকে কি কয় নিজৰ ওপৰত বেলেগৰহে কন্ট্ৰোল থাকে নিজৰ কন্ট্ৰোল নাথাকে তেনেকুৱা সিস্টেম এটা হেতুকে এপাৰ্থাইড সিস্টেম বুলি কয় what could men not fulfill their twin obligations In South Africa, it is a colored person tried to fulfill. If a colored person tried to fulfill his obligation to his people, he is isolated and prevented from fulfilling his obligations to his family. So, men could not fulfill their twin obligations. Please look at the answers. Okay, now let's move to the next one. Where did the ceremony take place? Why were the ceremonies so important? The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheater in the Pretoria in South Africa. The ceremonies were so important because these were meant for the celebration of victory of South African natives over the ruling whites for the installation of South Africa's first ever democracy. How had the military general's aptitude changed and why? Kyo change hoisile? Aru ki koy kenega change hoisile aru kyo change hoisile military generalor attitude hini. The military generals had witnessed the extraordinary courage. The military general had witnessed the extraordinary courage and wisdom shown by Nelson Mandela in freeing South Africa from the bondage of the whites. The military generals who would have arrested Mandela earlier have now pledged their loyalty to him. This shows their change in attitude. Please look at the answers so that we can move to the next. Okay, let's move to the next question. How was Mandela overwhelmed with a sense of history? So, in the first decade of the 20th century and before Mandela's birth, the whites in South Africa had erected a system of racial domination known as apartheid. In the last decade of the 20th century, when Mandela was in the 80s, he saw that system crumbling. So, he was overwhelmed with the sense of history. Okay? So, Mandela kiho overwhelmed hoisile in the sense of history. History at a change or karne, why was Mandela so happy that day? So, that day was the first decade of the 20th century and before Mandela's birth. The whites in South Africa were erected. South Africa white people eku right pon asile and they were লাইক নিজৰ যোনটো যোনটো নিজৰ ৰাইট হয় সেই ৰাইটটো পোৱা নাছিলে নিজে কৰা ভুল এটাৰ কাৰণে ভুলটো তেওঁলোকে অতৰাবৰ কাৰণেও ৰাইট পোৱা নাছিলে আৰু সেইখিনি যেতিয়া ৰেচিয়েল ডমিনেশ্যন যেতিয়া হৈ আছিলে হোৱাইটে ব্লেকৰ ওপৰত যেতিয়া ডমিনেট কৰি আছিলে আৰু সেইখিনি টাইমতে মেণ্ডেলা ফাৰ্ষ্ট বৰ্ণ হৈছিলে আৰু সেই চিষ্টেমটো কয় এপাৰথাইড বুলি ইন দ্য লাষ্ট ডিকেড অফ দ্য 20th century when Mandela was in his 80s he saw that system crumbling যেতিয়া মেণ্ডেলা 80 yearsত আছিলে 80sত আছিলে তেওঁৰ তেতিয়া তেওঁ কি কয় তেতিয়া তেওঁ প্ৰেছিডেণ্ট হ'ল সাউথ আফ্ৰিকাৰ ব্লেক প্ৰেছিডেণ্ট হ'ল আৰু তেতিয়াই সেই চিষ্টেমটো চেঞ্জ হোৱা দেখিছিলে চ' হি ৱাজ অভাৰফিল্ড উইথ আ চেন্স অফ হিষ্ট্ৰী যে তেওঁ এটা হিষ্ট্ৰী ক্ৰিয়েট কৰিলে বুলি তেওঁ বহুত হেপী হৈছিলে সেইদিনাখন What problems hinder each man to fulfill these obligations in South Africa? Okay, whenever a native South African tries to fulfill his duty to his people, he is ripped from his family and focused and forced to live an isolated life. He is isolated even if he tries to live as a human being. So, চাওকচোন এজন human being হিচাপে জীয়াই থাকিবলৈ বিচাৰিলেও কি কৰা হৈছিলে জীয়াই থাকিব বিচাৰিলেও তেওঁ আইচলেট কৰি দিয়া হৈছিলে চ' ইট ইজ ভেৰি ডিফিকাল্ট ইন চাউথ আফ্ৰিকা টু ফুলফিল দিছ অব্লিগেশ্যন চ' মানুহ হৈ পেলাই ভালকৈ জীয়াই থকাৰ ৰাইটটো নাছিলে নিজৰ কিবা এটা মন গৈছে গৈ পেলাই কিবা এটা কৰিবলৈ কিবা বোলে বজাৰৰ পৰা ভাল কিবা বস্তু আনিবলৈ তেওঁলোকৰ ৰাইট নাছিলে যে কাৰণ ভালখিনি চব হোৱাইটছৰ কাৰণে মানে ৰিজাৰ্ভড হৈ আছিলে এতিয়া আমাৰ ইয়াত এইটো চিষ্টেম আছে ন যে হেৰি যিকোনো এটা প্ৰগ্ৰাম পাতিলে আমাৰ ইয়াত ডিছক্ৰিমিনেশ্যন একো ক্ষেত্ৰত নাই জাষ্ট হাই অফিচিয়েলছ আৰু নৰ্মেল পিপলৰ মাজত এটা গেপ থাকে ন যিকোনো এটা প্ৰগ্ৰাম পাতিলে আমাৰ অডিটৰিয়ামতে হওক বা যি নহওক ফাৰ্ষ্টৰ দুটা ছেট নহ'লে তিনিটা ছেট অফ চেয়াৰ্ছ বুক থাকে যে ইয়াতে বেলেগ মানুহৰ কাৰণে বুক আছে ৰিজাৰ্ভেশ্যন কৰা আছে বুলি কয় চ' সেইটো চিষ্টেম সিহঁতে ডেইলি ফেচ কৰিছিল আৰু ইটছ লাইক মই যোনটো এক্সাম্পল দিলোঁ সেইটো এতিয়া বৰ্তমান হৈ আছে কিছুমান বস্তুৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত খালি ইমান বেছি নাই বাট তাতে এনেকুৱা আছিলে ইটছ দ্য ডে এণ্ড নাইট ইটছ দ্য ৰুটিন একদম ফ্ৰম দ্য বাৰ্থ টিল হিজ 80s তেওঁ তেনেকৈ ছাফাৰ কৰি গৈছিলে চ' আনচাৰখিনি চাই ল'ব এবাৰ Next is, so next move to the next answer. How did the policy of apartheid create a deep and lasting wound in South African black? So, how South African black or uporat ki korisile? How did the policy of apartheid keneke create korisile? A deep and lasting wound in South African blacks. No doubt, the policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in the South Africa and the blacks. It would take many years to recover from from the profound hurt. So, যোনটো কষ্ট পাইছিলে সেই কষ্টটোৰ পৰা ৰিকভাৰ হোৱাটো বহুত হাৰ্ড আছিলে the racial discrimination unleashed a reason of terror, oppression and brutality on the blacks of South Africa. Okay, why was Mandela overwhelmed with a sense of history and what bad things happened in the first decade of the century? কি হৈছিলে Mandela is overwhelmed with a sense of history and remembers when the hate apartheid policy was introduced in South Africa. After the Boer War, the white people of South Africa patched up their differences. They set up a system of racial domination against the black people of their own race. Okay, etu answer sai lok ebar. মই কুৱেশ্যনখিনি দি আপোনালোকক চাই ল'বলৈ এইটো ৰিজন এইটোৱে চ' দেট আপোনালোকে আনচাৰখিনি লিখিব বিচাৰিলেও যাতে লিখি ল'ব পাৰে আৰু এইখিনি যাতে আপোনালোকৰ সুবিধাজনক হয় পিছৰলৈও জাষ্ট লেট মি চেক ওৱান থিং Please check once. Okay, so I hope check kore. Let's move to the next part. What did the display of jets and military salute symbols? What is jets and military symbolize, salute symbolize. So junto display of jet junto display korisile ba military symbol junto asile eto ki symbolize korisile, military salute junto asile eto ki symbolize korisile. There was a spectacular show of South African jets and troop carries over the Union building. The highest general of the military and police saluted President Mandela. It was a clear demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a freedom and fairly elected government. Okay. Next question is, what ideals did Mandela set out for the future of South Africa in his speech? South Africa future karone ki di goisile, ideal ki asile? Mandela set out ideals for the future of South Africa because he had deep feelings for his country. Nijor country khonor karone deep feeling asile and countrymen, nijor country aru countrymenor karone bahut deep feeling asile. He pledged to liberate all the people. There you say, he pledged to liberate all the people from poverty, deprivation, from poverty, deprivation and discrimination. Okay, please go through the answer. Let's move to the next answer. What was born out of the experiences of an extraordinary human disaster? Why should humanity be proud of it? The apartheid regime was an extraordinary human disaster for the blacks of South Africa. The end of the apartheid laid down the foundation of a non-racial democratic regime in South Africa. This government based on human equality and dignity would be an ideal one of which all humanity will be proud. And the next question is, where did the ceremonies take place? Ceremony bur kot hoisile, where did it took place and what had been for decades? Aru decades loge ki hoye asile tate? The ceremonies of the inauguration of the new government took place at the lovely sandstone amphitheater in the Union building of Pretoria. The same place had remained the seat of white supremacy for decades. Abar sai lobo. Okay, so I think you all are done with this too. So let's move to the next one. What did Nelson Mandela pledge when he sworn in as president? So ki pledge korisile? Nelson Mandela pledged to uphold the constitution to his country and devote him to liberate his people from the bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender and other discriminations. There would be freedom and justice for all. Tate freedom or justice hokolore karone thakibo. When did Mandela's hunger for self turn into a hunger for freedom for all his people? Nijor freedom or hunger pora gute manukhinir freedom or hunger le ketia transfer mane ketia change hol. Mandela gradually realized that freedom was curtailed for those people who looked like he did, but not for the whites. Whites karone freedom same asile, ফ্ৰীডম আছিলে বাট অকল যে ব্লেক খিনিয়ে কিয় ফ্ৰীডম পোৱা নাছিলে ব্লেক খিনিৰে কিয় প্ৰবলেম হৈ আছিলে সো হেতু বস্তু ভাবি মেণ্ডেলাই কি কৰিছিলে মেণ্ডেলাৰ হাংগাৰ ফৰ ফ্ৰীডম ফৰ অল হিজ পিপল raised subsequently he joined the African National Congress and that was when his hunger for freedom became a great hunger jetia teo African National Africar jeta National Congress Committee jetia form join korise kot join korise sorry okay jetia teo African National African National Congress teo jeta join korise tetia teo ki hoise hunger for freedom and for all his people raise hoise please look at the answer once okay now let's move to the next one how does Mandela define courage and from where did he learn the meaning of courage Nelson Mandela learned the meaning of courage from great patriots and comrades in the struggle they risked their lives and stood up to attack and torture of the apartheid regime he learned that courage was not the absence of fear but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid but he who conquers that fear. Okay? Tar pasor question to ase why was it impossible for a man of Mandela's birth and color to fulfill their twin obligations? In South Africa no black could fulfill the twin obligations. If the black who tried to live as a human being was punished and isolated, a person who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was separated from his family and was forced to live in a secrecy and rebellion. Okay, please look at the answers. বেছি নাই আৰু আমাৰ হেকে হ'ব জাস্ট এইটা কোৱেশ্চনস কিটা চাই লওক okay now let's move to the next how did Mandela describe the system of government in his country in the first decade and in the final decade of the 20th century first decade ot ki boli koisile aru final decade juntu asile final decade ot ki boli koisile take yate hudha hoise first decade ot koisile in the first decade of the 20th century the whites erected a system of racial discrimination against the blacks they set up the most inhuman system of the apartheid where the blacks were denied the fundamental right of the freedom in the last decade of the 20th century the system was overturned. The policy of the apartheid was uprooted from the land and a new non-racial democratic government was installed to ensure equal rights and freedom to all the people of South Africa. Eto important hoy. This question is important, okay? Please answer to silo tumaloke. Okay, hope tumaloke sala Next answer. When and how did Mandela's hunger for his own freedom becomes the greater hunger for the freedom of his people? Nijor hunger khini hokolore hunger ketia form hoy goisile teneke. So it was Mandela realized that not only was he not free, but his people were not free. When he joined the African National Congress, then his hunger for his own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of his people. ঠিক আছে? So next is freedom is indivisible. Said Mandela, how were the chain on anyone were the chains on all of his people? Mandela thought that he is not more virtuous than the other. He thought that freedom is indivisible. The chain of any one of his people were chain on all of them. The chains on all of his people were the chains on him. Okay? Mandela ভাবিছিলে সকলোৱে ফ্ৰীডম পালেহে মই ফ্ৰীডম পাম, মই অকলে কেতিয়াও ফ্ৰীডম পাব নোৱাৰো, মই ফ্ৰীডম পোৱা মানে সকলোৱে ফ্ৰীডম পোৱা নহব, কিন্তু সকলোৱে যদি ফ্ৰীডম পায় তেতিয়াহলে মই নিজেও ফ্ৰীডম পোৱা হ'ব, তেনেকৈ ভাবিছিলে তেওঁ। হেতুৱে দিছে পঢ়িছোৱা। Okay, next let's move to the next one. Let me check how many more. Okay, only 3 questions are left. Please just what unintended effect was pronounced by decades of operation pasot ki effect hoisile? The decades of operation made him a strong person. 8 decades of operation mane beleg ki koy imane torture korile, torture bur mane hojjo kori he became more strong person. He set out the goal to liberate the people of South Africa. So goal eta set korile je South Africa manuhini ekelege ki koriba, liberate koriba from counting bondage of poverty, deprivation mane atorabo ki atorabo, poverty atorabo, deprivation, suffering and other discrimination bur teo atorai dibo. He decided to have freedom and justice for all. Teo decide korisile freedom aru justice adibo boli hokolore karone. Why is 10th May 1994 important for South Africa? Because it was the day of the first democratic non-racial government election which was held on this day in the country. Nelson Mandela became the first black president of the country. Please look at these answers. One more answer left. Tar pasot amar Nelson Mandela chapter question answers hini will be over. Hekhini hoi jabo. আৰু তাৰ পাছত আপোনালোকে ভালকে এটো চ্যাপ্টাৰ পঢ়িব পাৰে, ৰিভিজন কৰিব। সো এদিন মই এখন কোৱেশ্চন পেপাৰো আপোনালোকক ইয়াতে সেট কৰি দিম, আপোনালোকে যিমান জুনে জুনে পাৰে এপিয়াৰ কৰিব। সো ইন দ্য নেক্সট ক্লাস আমি স্টার্ট কৰিম এ টাইগাৰ ইন দ্য জু, অলৰেডি মই স্টার্ট কৰিছো। সো অল অফ ব্রিফ ডিসকাশন এন্ড সাম কোৱেশ্চন আনসার along with some question answers মই নেক্সট ক্লাসত আপোনালোকক গুটেখিনি দি দিম। Okay, so let's go to the next part. What did Nelson Mandela remember on the day of his inauguration? Oh, eto ei matro korilu no? Oh no. Sorry, second last question. What did Nelson Mandela remember on the day of the inaugural ceremony? Inaugural ceremony dinakhon ki monot pelaisile teo? Ki monot pelaisile inauguration ceremony dina? He remembered the history monot pelaisile. The birth apartheid, its effect on his people and long fight for freedom. He remembered the freedom fighters that suffered and sacrificed for freedom. He also remembered that freedom meant to him at different stages of life and his hunger for freedom. So, ekhini bostu teo মনত পেলাইছিলে who was that site how was that site a rainbow gathering for different colors and nations so rainbow gathering by different colors kenike hoy goisile the end of the apartheid regime was a common victory for peace justice and human dignity leaders and dignitaries of all nations irrespective of their color race and religion had gathered there to celebrate that victory so the site presented a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations okay please look at the answers once okay so I would like to thank you everyone thanking you for listening to me ইমান খিনি সময় যে মোক দিলে আপুনি আপোনালোকে হেতু কাৰণে বহুত বহুত ধন্যবাদ থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ আৰু আশা কৰিছো মই যিখিনি পঢ়াইছো এইখিনি আপোনালোকৰ কাৰণে বহুতখিনি বেনিফিচিয়াৰি হ'ব আপোনালোকৰ যাতে বহুত সহায় হয় আৰু কিবা ডাউট থাকিলে মোক কমেন্ট সেকশনত জনাব পাৰে মই আজি পঢ়োৱা ক্লাছটোত মই স্লাইডটোত মই নিজে নাই ভিডিওটোত ইমান but I am trying to show you the slide মই স্লাইডটো আপোনালোকৰ আগত প্ৰেজেন্ট কৰিবলৈ বেছিকৈ ট্ৰাই কৰিছো আজিৰ ক্লাছটোত স্পেশালি because it was a question answer session মই বিচাৰো যে আপোনালোকে সেই question answer খিনি ভালকে ক্লিয়াৰ হয় আপোনালোকৰ ভালকে যেতে পঢ়ে আপোনালোকে সো হেতু কাৰণে মই অলপ ডিসিপ্লিন হৈ মই স্লাইডটো বেছিকৈ প্ৰেজেন্ট কৰিছো আপোনালোকৰ আগত so let's check once ki sorry de okay so now let me do one thing let me check some of the important questions ketaman moi jungita important ba moi di disu tar eneko nohoy je important dilu boli apnaloke baki no pohibo de gute khini pohibo but egita olop bhalke besi bhalke sabo aru eto how was that site a rainbow gathering of different colors this is important in this what unintended effect to produce the decay suppression tent me eto to important boli moi bahut agor pora koi ahisu it's a very very important thing or 22 to bahut besi important okay when and how hunger people are important freedom is indivisible eto change eto man nahe tanike eto important boli moi othoniyo likhi disu etiao likhi disu that it is very important okay understood eto important hoy de wait a minute yate ki koisile eto kunto important freedom is eto how does Mandela define courage from where did he learn the meaning of courage impossible for Mandela's birth color to in applications eto ago to dia as a board kita eto this both questions are important okay এইটো মই বহুত দি আছিলোঁ where did the ceremony take place where did the ceremony take place মই ক্লাছতো বহুত বুজাই দিছোঁ এইটো মই বহুত বেছি বুজাইছোঁ এইটো আনসাৰ মই সেইটো কাৰণে বহুতে মনত আছে এইটো মই কোৱা symbolize military future South Africa speech future speech to iman important like read you all have to read everything but the thing is important iman nohoy how did the policy of apartheid create a deep and lasting wound in the South African blacks why was Mandela overwhelmed with a sense of history and ঠিক আছে বাকিখিনি তোমালোকে চাবা গুটেখিনি জাস্ট মই ইয়াৰ পৰা কেটামান মই দি দিছো ইম্পৰ্টেন্ট okay check once 24 22 19 18 16 17 15 13 10 আগৰখিনি মই ইমান তেনেকে দিয়া নাই okay एक सेकेंड okay এখিনি already কৰোৱা হৈছে so we all it's already done so please go through the important questions whichever I have marked here so আপোনালোকে বাকিখিনি ভালকে পঢ়িব so আজি ক্লাছটো মই এখিনতে সামৰণি মাৰিছো ভালকে পঢ়িব আৰু please go through the questions once so মই আজি ক্লাছটো এনে স্লাইডখিনি বেছি প্ৰেজেন্ট কৰিছো so please go through that thank you so much everyone for attending the class সকলো ভালে থাকিব আৰু ভালকে পঢ়িব thank you